fairly aggressive. And again, this is the most represented lineup that you'll be seeing, with the Odd Rogue, Token Druid, Zoo Warlock, Shell, plus the 4th deck. And then we go on the opposite side of the spectrum, which is what Alpe brought.
Yeah, Alpe's lineup of even Warlock, combo Shutterwalk, Death Rattle Hunter, and Token Druid, it's not really like a strategy other than killing control decks. This is a strategy that tends to be very strong as control. One of the interesting decks that actually is sort of out of place in his lineup is the Token Druid. That's a deck that is generally more anti-aggro than anti-control, though one interesting thing about it is because of the nature of most of the warrior decks being odd warrior rather than control warrior, that deck actually functions pretty well against them. But we will have a Druid mirror in this first round. It actually is token versus token.
Yeah, that's right. Token Druid ends up being fairly good against aggressive strategies because of Spreading Plague and the ability to come back on the board very easily, even if you fall back behind. That being said, the one question mark is Death Rattle Hunter. That deck can be very vulnerable to aggressive strategies. Even Shutterwalk Shamans, a lot of them in this tournament have respect to those fast decks by playing the Wild Pyromancer version with a lot of anti-aggro spells.
Yeah, of the anti-control decks you can play to run into aggro with, Shutterwalk is one of the better of them. That said, yeah, the Death Rattle Hunter deck did struggle quite a bit last week during the Europe playoffs, specifically because there were so many aggressive decks. And that could be sort of the linchpin here. If Alpe can get a win with that, could be a lot better situation for him.
So Kin, of course, representing Hong Kong, going up with Alpe, who is one of the members of TNT. Him and a few other players like Fire, his teammates, are also qualified for playoffs, trying to make a big representation. Kin is coming off a gold medal finish, by the way, in the Asia Games. That is kind of a big landmark achievement for just Hearthstone as a competitive game in general, because the Asia Games, while not necessarily being an official gold medal for the entire countries, was celebrated along with games like StarCraft, like in the past, for example, that has similar runs to some of those Olympic games.
Yeah, so it was a demonstration event, I believe, which does mean that Kin does have a gold medal in Hearthstone, which is a pretty awesome. I don't know how many people can claim for that to be true.
I think only one person claimed that, and that's Kin.
Yeah, I think that's
no one else.
So, the singular gold medalist in Hearthstone's history. Pretty awesome. Hope to have more in the future, but for now, he can bask in that glory.
That's right. And I did have the pleasure myself of presenting Hearthstone for the IOC, so it's a pretty cool step forward. And hopefully many more of that to come in the future. Coming back into this game, this Token Druid differences. We talked a little bit about it in the pre-show, the Violet Teachers versus the Bolster Bears.
He's not even a bear, but that's what I called Shell Scavenger when I first saw him. I was like, oh, it's Bolster Bear.
The Bears versus
He's a Tonka, I think. A Tonka is what the creature type or whatever race is called. But we're going to see the power of Bolster Bear right now as Kin gets a Spreading Plague off, but that Strong Shell Scavenger is going to make this a very strong board for Alpe.
Partially what makes it really good, too, is the follow-up. Forbidden Flute ends up giving you a lot of flexibility to the deck. You can use it as a second or third scavenger, depending on what you have in your deck list. You can even use it as a follow-up to Cenarius, and just keep buffing your board non-stop. It's such a important crux of the deck that gives you so much flexible options, which is the essence of what Token Druid really wants.
Yeah, we've talked about Token Druid over the course of the event so far as being something we see showing up in a lot of these aggro lineups. It's not really an aggressive deck. It's more of a minion ramp combo deck, as so many Druid decks are. It's looking to build a big board, but doing so in sort of a more methodical way, with ramping up to these combos and spells. And here's one of the key combos, Soul of the Forest. So now, Kin gonna hide behind this board of Scarabs, and even if Alpe can push through them, he can make a counter push with the treants he gets off of them and the buffs he has in his hand.
Yeah, although counter push is still relatively weak if they get buffed yet again. It's like Alpe gonna draw, gonna ramp. I was like, it looked like at first he was drawing.
Play another Scavenger here if he wants, which I think going into his Ultimate Infestation turn, thanks to the mana ramp there. And look at this, these are some more than annoying Annoyotrons. They're gonna do some serious damage here.
Yeah, so kind of what we were talking about was, yes, you can counterattack, but you're trading off your board as well. And Alpe still has some of his best combos yet left with Soul of the Forest and Spreading Plague. I wonder how much this matchup dynamic has shifted because of the different deck lists. In the past, it was kind of this debate back and forth of who would lose first by extending onto the board, because then you play into Spreading Plague and then Soul of the Forest, and then you can't really counterattack.
I think I remember it was like a dream hack early in the format where Zalay and Amnesiac played, and they had a game that went into like this ridiculous fatigue scenario where Zalay just wasn't playing cards and burning because he couldn't afford to play Oaken Summons and get cards to his deck.
Yeah. It was a 45-minute game, I believe, between Amnesiac and Zalay in the finals of DreamHack Austin. Amnesiac lost that game, ultimately won the tournament, but he said that he learned the matchup as it was panning out because of how unmapped it was. And now fast forward a few months, Token Druids have changed their deck list a lot. And I think because Alpe has a little bit more of that power value with things like the Scavenger and Chain Gang scenarios, Kin is going to be a little bit more aggressive here, but he is extending into the Spreading Plague, which is kind of what we're talking about.
Well, there's actually an interesting turn for Alpe because Spreading Plague is an option, and so is Infestation. He could Infestation and kill one of these minions here, which would be a little bit scary though, because he is leaving up a pretty big board. There was already just a branching path played. I didn't really sort of look at the math exactly on what that would look like, but the swipe in hand though makes this a lot safer. He's able to clear off just about everything and build up a board of his own.
Yes, and now the threat scenarios is super strong on top of the Savage Roar, the Branching Bats, and the Soul of the Forest. Kin gonna Ultimate Infestation right back, but with all of his mana crystal used, he only can pretty much play Arcane Tyrant and hope that Alpe doesn't have lethal, and he's got 7 damage on board plus 10 from the Savage Roar, so that's 17. Picks up another form of damage. That could be the game, doesn't end up getting it.
But he does have Infestation of his own, so he can fire one right back. Let's see what he picks up.
Ranging Paths. Okay, so that should be the game-ending damage he's looking for in the following turns. Alpe doing a pretty good job of trying to manage Kin's board. You see that he's trading a little bit extra, but that's because in this matchup, you're not really squeezing that 1 or 2 extra points of damage. You're often winning by a landslide based off the burst. Yes, Druid can gain a lot of life, but you really want to restrict your opponent's ability to have a good Spreading Plague board right back. And having things like 1/1 tokens are a liability, because then your opponent can summon first and then trade off very easily with the hero power.
Yeah, especially in the late stages of the game, playing, say, Whispering Woods into an opposing board can be disastrous because you build a board of 1/1s and they're like, okay, well, I'll get 1/5s and I'll also Soul the Forest them, and there's no way you're getting through. Here, though, Kin is able to combine the Malfurion with Power of the Wild to make a pretty big board here.
Yeah, and actually, he does have a board with Raging Paths.
One interesting thing last turn was that Alpe had the opportunity to kill the Violet Teacher and chose to attack face. The Violet Teacher would have left a Treant in play, but now the value that Kin has gotten from that Violet Teacher has gone well beyond the trait that would have been left over, and frankly, the damage that Alpe would have gotten, did get into the face.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Something to consider as this game continues to progress forward. And one thing too is that I feel like both players, well, at least on Alpe's side, are playing relatively fast.
They're playing very quickly.
And the thing about Token Druid here is that there's a lot of trades and damage calculations.
There's a lot going on for how quickly these players have been navigating their turn.
It is, my opinion, one of the most interactive matchups in Hearthstone right now because of just how you play response or threat, keep checking yourselves, and you have to keep checking damage and life totals. And yet these guys are blazing through turns, it feels like, at least on Alpe's side.
Kin, though, he's taking his time this turn.
Yeah, certainly an interesting tech with Innervate to help squeeze out just a little bit more tempo, getting out that Ultimate Infestation out a little quicker, freeing up your hand so that way you can yield Ultimate Infestation into a Spellstone.
Kin is also playing the Violet Teacher build, which can use Innervate much more effectively to build larger boards, potentially, say, Teacher into Innervate, Power of the Wild to make a large board, say, against an aggressive deck. That version, I think, actually is substantially, can have those sort of good proactive pushes against aggressive decks, though some of the taunt versions with Serenade Chain Gang can do the same with that card.
Kin has no substance really beyond that ultimate infestation. Things like Whispering Woods, not great. Innervate, Wild Growth, Nourish, those are fantastic cards at the beginning of the game. He's freeing up his hand space so he can ultimate infestation. And Alpe, if he picks up that read, says, you know, if you're trying ultimate infestation, maybe I just set up a situation where you have no good targets and then counter push for lethal.
Well, this is a strange choice to Giggle Inventor, then Wild Growth.
Yes, I was actually about to point the same thing. I thought he was going to set up Soul of the Forest and then go aggressive. But instead, he's taking it a little bit slower, and now there actually is a decent infestation target.
Not really slower in terms of the pace at which he's taking his turn. He's still just blazing through these.
Yeah. So Kin can dump cards first, excess mana to see what he draws. Would have the flexibility of playing a spell first and then intervening for the extra mana.
Whispering Woods are not very good here. I expect we'll see him fire off the Infestation. He just loses most of his board just playing a Whispering Woods, even if Alpe just trades on board. Looks like he's going to Innervate now to avoid burning a card.
Yeah, there's nothing really he can utilize that Innervate for right now. I think he used one Spell Stone, so if you come down to whether or not you can impact it with a single draw, I don't think you can. Damage. So there's 5 plus 10 plus 8. So 23. Hero power is 20. 26. Am I counting it right?
Yeah, 23, 26. I believe you're correct.
Very close.
Yeah.
But we all know that going for it is also a recipe for disaster.
Well, which is also makes the way that Alpe navigated his last turn so strange, because if he had played, say, Whispering Woods, he would have been in a position where he would have clearly a larger board against what was a pretty heavily telegraphed ultimate infestation.
Right, or even Soul of the Forest. I mean, if the Spine 3 got hit, it'd still leave a 2-2 behind that's lethal. Ooh. Okay, now I'm kind of hoping Kin can survive and outlast Alpe's damage here at this point.
I am so confused by how Alpe's navigating this game. It seems like he's just going back and forth between different plans each turn.
Yeah, I mean, granted, this is one of the matchups that you do end up having a lot of ebb and flow of whether or not you're aggressive or defensive. But I agree with what you're saying. It feels like he's fairly inconsistent and costing himself either dominant board position, which is understandable because of Spreading Plague, but he's also not giving himself that lethal setup.
Right. He consistently is not really putting up a position that is going to actually put much pressure on Kin, which is giving him a lot of time to navigate from, frankly, what was a fairly weak hand a couple of turns ago.
Yeah, that was a very weak hand. He had 4 cards that didn't do anything. He had Innervate, Ultimate Infestation that couldn't hit anything, and then 2 random cards.
And granted, Alpe's desire to potentially play around that Spreading Plague is understandable, trying to sort of hedge his board position to not be too big.
Right.
But especially with the amount of he has his own Spreading Plague. He has a bunch of reach in his hand as well. If for instance, Kin had Spreading Plague did not back it up with Soul of the Forest, he can just attack it using his Spreading Plague himself.
So is this a read on Alpe's hand saying you don't have Spreading Plague, or perhaps he doesn't even care?
I don't. Did he just draw Spreading Plague?
He did.
And this, the way that Alpe has navigated this game, he just let this Spreading Plague happen, because if he played into this 2 turns ago before Kin had the opportunity to play Ultimate Infestation and draw that far, it feels like he would have been in just a stronger situation to have pressed the issue rather than giving Kin the opportunity to actually draw into it.
So, Kilo, I'm going to bring up something. I think this game now has legitimate cause to go to Fatigue.
Yes.
And he has an extra armor gain card in Token Summons, and Alpe lost a little bit of extra burst in Saboteur. And now, Alpe's going to try to go for a stalemate, but the problem is, he's forced to play Soul of the Forest, which gives Kin the initiative to branching paths for attack and limit his opponent's board first, or gives Kin follow-up opportunity to maybe even stall further, depending on how the game gets out.
Well, Kin is a card deeper in Fatigue as well.
That is true. That is one factor to consider. So in positions like the, by the way, the Bio Teacher is also potentially a pretty nice.
Also, Power of the Wild here, you know, giving the minions the additional attack and health. I believe Alpe does still have Cenarius in his deck, though.
Oh yeah, Cenarius is gonna be so big. I mean, the thing is, when you get the first trades by being proactive in this Spreading Plague War, you're often very far ahead because you get so much life advantage, and then your opponent is forced to counter push because then you can end it through like a swipe and a Savage Roar. Ooh, Kin. He just wants to get rid of all these tokens right here, right now. I like it.
He also can hero power and
yes, limit the board. Limit the board size is also a really big thing. Very clever sequencing just to get the extra buff on the remaining token that gets summoned by Zamora.
So there's the Cenarius, but again, you know, the board on Kin's side has all these 4/4s that are going to leave behind 2/2s. Alpe only has the 4 minions that are immediately buffed. Can't do anything else alongside the Cenarius. He does have a Spellstone, but it is not upgraded. So at most, it can kill a 2 health minion, and he's still just leaving a big board up. There aren't additional buffs for Kin. I believe his last card is Savage Roar. Have we only seen the one? Or did he play the other one earlier? I believe the last card may be Savage Roar.
No matter what, though, Alpe is in deep trouble.
Savage Roar into Soul of the Forest. Okay, so he wants to clear these and get himself 2/2s to try and hold off here. But again, now Kin has initiative.
Yeah, and so here's the scenario we're talking about. The scenarios we're talking about is Kin could legitimately make a case for just playing a little bit slower on the board, trade everything, instead of just trying to burst that in one turn.
I'm out of cards.
I mean, that's still valuable in itself. Extra damage to help make the difference between that extra card fatigue. Kin can legitimately just trade everything, play Vile Teacher and Whispering Woods, and dominate the board. He saw Alpe burn his second swipe.
And I believe both copies of Spreading Plague are gone. That's not his card.
Both Soul Bars have been gone. Looks like Kin's going to be extra resourceful because he has to account for the Cenarius and the last card of Alpe's deck. And Alpe, you can see that he feels the pressure. At first, his ads, he wasn't really feeling a lot. Kind of relaxing.
It's Furious Owl, yeah, that's not a card that's going to do enough for him.
He is dead.
And there's a swipe on the other side too. There's just a swipe remaining, so these 1/1s they don't matter.
Okay, but I feel like this was a complete throw from Alpe.
Alpe was in a position where it seemed like he was trying to respect Spreading Plague, not playing additional minions, leaving a board of say 4 minions at all times, and then after Kin had drawn so many cards with Infestation, he's like, I'm just going to play Whispering Woods. And the Spreading Plague from Kin that he drew at the last possible moment, right when Alpe gave him that window, is exactly what turned the game around.
Yeah.
I feel like if Alpe had gone for it earlier, maybe if he'd continued his hedge and kept his board small, he may have been able to still win that game. But he just put the foot in the pedal like at exactly the wrong point, and Kin ended up turning the game around.
Yes. It is a very good analogy, Kibler, in prime position to at least threaten for HC points, if not make the top 8 cutoff. We're looking for 4 players to join us in the Fall Championship this weekend.
Look at Alpe's face right there. He mulliganed and drew that.
Oh.
And he chose to mulligan Spreading, which is a decision that is very unusual against Zoo. I think that generally, your plan against Zoo is kill their stuff until you can Spreading Plague, but you need to have several parts of that. One is the things that kill their stuff. The other is Spreading Plague. And yes, you want to try and find ramp cards, but you don't have Spreading Plague.
I agree. You know, I think Spreading Plague is one of your better tools. If you look at statistics, like how often Druids keep Spreading Plague against Warlock, it is largely correlated to their win rate with how often you face up against Zoo Warlock, because it doesn't do much against Control Warlock or even Warlock. You know, Mech-Cthulhu Warlock, it's not going to do anything against those decks. But Zoo Warlock, I mean, at the very least, it gives you time, so that way you can strike back against your opponent, because that's what Token Druids thrive under. They thrive under the opportunities that they're given when they have a lot of buffer room. In this case, Alpe is going to need a little bit of extra help from the top of his deck, although he did get a couple of nice tools with Wild Growth and Spells.
Yeah, those were some great draws that he picked up over the last 2 turns, but still a bit of a clunky hand here.
Yeah, and Fungalmancer is so powerful on 5, although Kin does have other options. In fact, you can kind of make a case for a lot of them, but I think Fungalmancer is overpriced.
Yeah, Fungalmancer here gives you a board that is powerful, delivers a lot of damage, and doesn't, leaves you with good opportunity to fight against the Spreading Plague if it did come down this turn.
Okay. So, again, this is something that is worth thinking about because Alpe played this turn relatively fast. Yes, he doesn't want to take the damage. Yes, there's, what, 11 showing on board. You could die. Oh, Dreadlord just got top deck, though.
Dreadlord, Kin has 1 Dreadlord in his deck, and this is actually part of the reason that I chose the particular players that I did for my predictions was I felt like players who have Dreadlord in Zoo are giving a very strong nod to what the metagame is likely to look like, and this is a big reason that the token Druid decks are very vulnerable to Dreadlord. For instance, this turn from Alpe, if it were not for that Dreadlord, could easily be Whisper, Coin, Soul Forest, which would be a lot more powerful.
Right.
If it's
Wasn't dead.
The Dreadlord play. Well, to be fair, this does still give him a board that's going to survive to the next turn because the Dreadlord killing all these leaves 2/2s in the board.
Yeah, but there's no turn. There's
it's
15
just
power
dead.
on board.
Oh, I wasn't counting that part up, but for instance, if Alpe last turn, I chose to go with that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hadn't even counted up the damage there, but Kin had it. He gets exact lethal to take down Alpe in a quick game to take a 2-0 lead.
You know, a card would have been pretty good to stall for an extra turn.
Spreading Plague.
You're a caster, you're a streamer, and you're a mind reader.
Listen, I played last weekend in a tournament.
How long are we gonna ride
I had
that train?
Spreading Plague in my deck, and I kept it when I played against the Warlock.
That's why you're...
Rogue deck, this odd Rogue deck, is going to be pretty tough for him to beat, I think, with his Warlock deck.
Right. I mean, if all else, Token Druid is a generally good ban because even despite again I ran some simulations based off what was already brought, so some percentages and whatnot. Token Druid, despite the fact that people are teching against it with even Warlock, with Control Priest, with the odd Control Warrior, with Water Pyromancer, Shutterwalk, everybody is there's Dreadlords. Everybody is accounting for Token Druid, and yet despite that, it still comes out at 51% against the field, if you can believe that.
So how does the simulation calculate like all the particular texts?
Well, I mean, with existing data.
Okay.
So you put them all in, and then you kind of like say like, okay, you basically show the popularity of certain decks and whatnot. Token Druid still comes out to even, generally speaking. So that's how strong the deck is. Even though it's like, quote, a bad matchup, it can still win these less favorable ones by just having good plays and one board modern tech.
Speaking of bad matchups with good plays here, there's a 6/6, a Flappy Bird, already in play here for Kin. This Serenade Chain Gang will help stem the bleeding at least a little bit, especially with the dagger.
I forgot we're casting a pack where we don't have time to talk about
seriously.
anything in early turns. Like, so much has happened.
We were just trying to contextualize lineup decisions, and like one player's almost dead. Like.
Yeah. So kind of going back in here and not tunneling too much on our previous conversation. Kin is looking like he is in a pretty good position with this Blood Knight to help run away with the game. But Alpe does have that Lightning Storm and Earthshock right now. Help stabilize. Hex is also a really good pickup because now you can hold on to Lightning Storm.
He wants to go for it, wants to get this clear. He is going to turn 5, which does mean that there's a threat of Fungalmancer if he were to just play Hex.
That's true.
And also would leave a flat play, which is also terrifying, especially with potentially a Fungalmancer one. This does mean that Kin can develop here only going to a 4-mana opponent, which means that he's very likely to have a good Fungalmancer opportunity next turn as well.
Yeah, the only thing is that I think Lightning Storm is one of your premium removal tools. And if you like Earthshock, the 3-1 with the Flappy Bird, and you also Hex, you're still in a pretty good position. And also making you have the maximum mana to spend. When you have Electra Storm Surge in your hand, for example, it gives you so much more range and flexibility. So I think Alpe is valuing his life total, which is totally respectable against odd Rogue. But I wonder if that's going to bite him in the butt later.
He does also just have a healing rate in his hand, which, the relative value of his life total is different at that stage.
Glory to the Zamora.
All right, he wants to get a big Blood Knight here.
Yeah,
This guy's toast.
I mean, Alpe showed that he had to basically use one card and a half to remove his first Blood Knight with Lightning Storm.
Well, and also one really big thing about this is this makes a board that is resistant to Volcano. Leaves
Yes.
enough power on the board that Volcano does not clear. Forces a Hex here, but that leaves him with a board that gets to Fungalmancer and Redagger just in terms of mana efficient switch this turn, which is huge. And that makes his board even more difficult to Volcano. One thing I actually think Alpe may want to consider not toteming, because he did put up he did put up 2 more health, potentially have to clear with Volcano. Granted, he could get a taunt totem, which would help him potentially stay alive a little bit. But there are I guess this is the only really bad result. At least Spell Power Totem gives you a bit of extra damage. There's only 1 extra point to board, but this is going very badly for Alpe. He is just getting punched in the face repeatedly.
Wow.
Agatha?
No, that's still not enough.
It's not going to clear the board. It does leave 8 on the board, 9, 10 from hand. It would keep him alive this turn.
Relatively speaking.
He is not dead if he plays Agatha this turn.
He could Electra, Storm Surge, and Volcano.
That's also a possibility.
That clears everything, and then he has 7 mana remaining. He can Healing Rain and Life Drinker. I think that's the line.
Is he just going to Volcano?
Volcano and Healing Rain? I think if you kind of put yourself in this position, you have to take a risk. And another thing too is that he Healing Rained after he Volcanoed, so he increased the health on his main anti-totem, which I think he prioritizes his own life.
Right.
That being said, having double Healing Rain and Life Drinkers means that he has essentially a lot of life to work with, and Hagatha gains 5 armor. So Alpe pretty much picked up all of his life gain cards.
Yeah.
I wonder.
The only thing that he's missing is essentially the Gluttonous Ooze for the cherry on top.
Play Dire Maul into Void Ripper, which will by default kill this totem.
Yep.
I was going to go ahead and Vile Spine it.
I mean, he just wants maximum board pressure, and I can't blame him.
Yeah.
Alpe used Volcano and Lightning Storm.
This does also mean that he has a bit more health on the board against a Lightning Storm. Number 2.
Well, now Alpe has Electra Lightning Storm.
Yeah, I can full clear.
Problem is, he's back in that same position we mentioned, where he didn't get to decisively clear the board, and he has to decide if he wants to clear or if he wants to gain life.
Yeah, Electric Healing Rain. Okay.
Reno Jackson.
Well, this does mean that he still needs to do something on the board.
Well, he has Hagatha and Lightning Storm, but he can't play both.
Oh,
Iris and
dear.
support. And also, Kin has the legitimate case of just playing Baku and just like trying to see what Alpe can respond to it. But the problem is, if your opponent has like the second Hex, then you just spent your entire turn doing nothing.
Yeah.
I think I also just like the unstable element, just so you can increase the amount of plays that you have.
Do you want to? I think you want to play. Do you want to play the Void Ripper first?
I think he's looking for like a Cold Blood or SI something. Oh, Hedge Canthug's also a really good chance. Wow, damage out the wazoo.
No, there's no Leroy. So that's one of his obviously most important burst sources.
One of his most important burst sources, but this is still a lot of damage.
It is, yeah. He's got double Cold Blood and a Deadly Poison source to throw it all in there right now.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, okay, well, you just Reno'd and you're at 6.
Well, yeah, what meta is this? This is exactly Reno Jackson versus any pirate deck back in the day. And Alpe can clear the board, but well, first of all, it's not guaranteed. And even if he did, he's still under threat. Farsight. Mind Control Tech.
MC Tech's got to be pretty attractive here.
Oh!
Takes the huge Vile Spine Slayer.
Are you serious?
And has the mana left over to play a Serenade Chain Gang after the Lightning Storm.
Kills off the SI.
And now the fact that Kin played Unstable Element means he is in fatigue. It's not even just the fact that there's this huge board swing. He has no more draws this game. It's all gone.
TNTAlpe needed a miracle to pull himself out of the situation. And he didn't just get one rabbit out of that, he got 5.
He far-sighted into that mind control tech, which then took the big thing.
Right, which already was something that I was wondering about. Do you even want to play Farsight in that position? Like, you want to start thinking about the probability of getting a totem so you can increase your Lightning Storm. And trying to work with what he's got. No extra damage. That Leroy Jenkins is sorely missed.
He doesn't need that much more damage from what he can see. The fact that Hagatha is there is going to be really bad news, though, because that 411 Piles line is going to stick around.
Yes.
You can clear off everything, gain some armor.
Attack with a 3-2. Okay. Doesn't matter, actually.
It actually can't get into anything.
Yeah. I was behind on the animations. But, in this position, there's not really much that Kin can do.
I think you need Big Baku to connect. That's what you need.
And the second Hex is there. And then the Life Drinkers are just enough to put it out of range. Alpe has done it. So he stays alive.
Yeah.
Shutterwalk escapes. And this is also the more greedy version of Shutterwalk. No Wild Pyromancer with extra anti-aggro tech in it. I guess you could argue the double Urshock is more nod to the aggro, but Alpe is able to stabilize by the hair of his chinny chin chin. Man, did he need that win, because it was looking really bad.
Definitely a rough spot for him. He's going to have to win 2
close out the series. Alpe is going to put that Death Rattle Hunter on ice, trying to minimize its aggro exposure.
He's going to have to win with it, though, regardless.
Will.
Gotta have get it through against this odd rogue, and that is a tough matchup. So Alpe with the Token Druid. This can be a volatile matchup surrounding the specific cards that the Token Druid draws. Because the Odd Rogue doesn't really have any kind of board clear, if you do get to ramp into, say, a Whispering Woods with Soul of the Forest to back it up, and your opponent doesn't have a great opening, that can run them over very quickly. But if you don't have a strong opening and, say, draw a bunch of expensive cards, it can be tough for you. But Wild Growth into a hand of Giggling Inventor Spreading Plague is good news for Alpe.
So this is a debate that I've heard a lot about whether or not you play South Sea Deckhand on 1 against decks that have turn 2 plays. And specifically can kill your 2-1 in response to it. And I've heard both sides. One is you don't want to play the South Sea Deckhand because you anticipate your opponent not having a Wild Growth, so that you give them a target to attack and then you lose the recursive damage. The other side is... Oh my
just a second. that swipe leapt off the deck. As Kin makes the call to coin out the Vicious Fledgling, which there's only really 4 cards in the deck that would actually allow Alpe to kill it that turn, 2 swipes and 2 Spellstones. And Alpe picks one of them up and wipes his board.
Yeah, and rightfully so. If you didn't deal that Vicious Fledgling, that thing could get out of hand very quickly. Even though he had taunts ready to go with Giggling Inventor, still, you don't want that Vicious Fledgling to get that extra buff.
Well, Giggling Inventor is there, but Blood Knight is there for Alpe.
Oh, do you all in?
Also, ooh, that's actually a really interesting draw.
I think you all in. Why not?
Make a big one. He does. Actually, for some reason, he was at 5 as well. No, I like this definitely playing the Squire as well, getting as big a Blood Knight as you can.
Oh, mom.
12 Blood Knight. And Alpe's deck, he has no Naturalized. This is Token Druid. This isn't like Malagos Druid, where you have those tools. And yeah, we see he's just got to chip away at that and deal 12 damage to get that off the board.
You guys have essentially infinite board stall against the 12 attack minions.
He's got a lot.
Because he's got 3 more taunts after these the Spreading Plague. Oh, wow.
Oh, dear.
So I feel like we've been casting some of these games that are like this, Kibler, where like both players are just getting like really insane draws based off the way things are panning out. That is so crazy to me. I don't know who's favored from this position.
There's another Spreading Plague, another Giggling Inventor.
Another Giggling Inventor!
But there's going to be another Blood Knight coming down for Kin here.
Like, thank goodness Alpe had counterattacked to remove some of his Divine Shields, because that thing would have been ridiculous. Oh, it's just going to be a very pedestrian 9-9, by the way.
You get double Giggling, I get double Blood Knight. Like, the reaction of Alpe too just rolls back in his seat. Come on.
Sorry. I mean, it's just as likely to draw double Blood Knight on your opponent's side as you are to draw double Giggling.
Exactly. The same odds, but the player who plays Blood Knight comes out pretty far ahead in that deal.
Oh, yeah. One player is much happier than the other. Now, Kin, if he picks up a low-costing minion, a 1-drop, he is going to be cooking.
All right, can he Vile Spine this turn? He draws Baku. That is as high a cost minion as they come. All right, well, these Blood Knights are these are raid boss Blood Knights right here.
Yeah, so what's so funny is that these minions are absurdly too strong. And then you also combine with how fast that they're playing. I feel like we're watching like a solo adventure boss, you know, where they just stack insanely powerful minions over and over against you. There we go.
All right, well, they both get to connect the face this turn. So that's 25 damage. Is that all?
Yeah. Only.
I mean, well, Kin has to be, thinking, okay, is there any sort of counterattack that kills me if I just send all this damage to face, right? Because there's still a Cenarius and a Arcane Tyrant up.
Yeah.
He does just Vile Spine that. So I think he's actually going to kill Cenarius. Yeah.
No, you're completely right, because like there's the double Savage War Branching Path lethal right now. In fact, you could even somewhat justify trading both, but I want to.
I'm not doing 14 to that 1 health Arcane Tyrant. That's not happening.
And you could. I'm not saying it's good.
At this point, you have that Spreading Plague. But what's it doing for you? What are you actually accomplishing? Spreading. I mean, you're not dying next turn, but is there a way that this actually keeps you alive? You can Spreading Plague into Whispering Woods. This actually,
does he want to attack here too? Because if he keeps this 4-1 alive, that means Branching Path and Savage War is a little more alive next turn.
Well, it does give him 1 fewer 1/5 to keep him alive.
He only needs to survive 2 of these attacks from the Knights.
Does Leroy end the game here? There's Leroy. Oh, Leroy SI might, because he needs to connect with 1 Blood Knight to the face.
No.
So, no, there's no just lethal here. So I think that now Kin is going to be just trying to mop up as much damage he can. Is this actually potentially a counter lethal? He can grab 1 more of these. He's got 17 life.
So he's got 3
8 plus 11. 8 plus
Oh
6
my
plus
god, that's
4.
lethal?
This is lethal! This is a game where he had a 12-12 and 14-14 Blood Knight, and thanks to the power of those Spreading Plagues keeping him alive, Alpe is still in this series. That was outrageous how that game went back and forth.
I am very unhappy. I am not a happy camper.
I actually really like to see those Blood Knights like come out still like, not just auto win, because I hate games where he gave himself another 1/5, which did potentially prevent the counter lethal from like a Leroy coming down and hitting him for 14 with the Blood Knight. So him getting 4 damage to the face and not getting that 1/5, I think he dies that turn if there's 1 fewer 1 against the Leroy specifically.
You could be right, yeah. Might have actually worked out that way. I'll have to go back and check. Either way, the Rogue...
We got a game 5.
Well, this is starting to now be a little bit scary because Hunter is a class that can deal with Rogue very well, but Death Rattle Hunter is not exactly that kind of traditional Hunter deck that you've expected. It's very slow, it's very combo-oriented, and requires a lot of pieces that move together.
Yeah, I want to be the Rogue in this matchup because you put on a lot of pressure very quickly. The Hunter deck is a very powerful mid-game deck. It is not a very powerful early game deck. And the Rogue deck can put on a lot of pressure. We see in a 1-drop, into Dagger, into Henge Clan Thug, and Alpe, ooh, This is some powerful stuff here. Does just take the egg.
Choices.
TNTAlpe really needs to pick up a Hunter's Mark because he needs something to kill the Henge Clan Thug. Then he needs something to kill a Flappy Bird because Henge Clan Thug becomes 4/4 immediately. He does have the flanking strike, so he can coin out his flanking strike to kill this 4/4 Henge Clan Thug. But then what does he do against the Flappy Bird that comes down next? Now he doesn't have a coin if he uses it here.
Right. That's a really good summary of the early game. Oh, he has a play dead.
So the play dead is very big. That draw is huge. Really pays him off for taking the egg off of the tracking there. So next turn he can make a 5/5.
Yes, but he will have to take punishment for one turn with this Vicious Fledgling. And actually having this additional Dire Mole is massive for Kin, because that just makes Fungal Mancer's pressure even greater. And so TNTAlpe has two choices.
TNTAlpe just fell out of his seat. He drew Flying Strike number 2!
Goodness!
Oh, wow. That was the best possible card he could draw, because that shuts down Fungal Mancer. That puts him in a position where he's now rolling to the middle turns with a lot of life.
Well, now he has Witchwood Grizzly.
Yeah.
And unless Kin specifically draws his Valor Spine Slayer.
Big Grizzly, too. 3/9. That is not a Slayer.
It's not a Slayer, but he can still get past. And this is still very scary. I mean, my goodness, it's as if the Vicious Fledgling already hit phase twice with that kind of stat line.
Tracking.
Where's your, you know,
tracking. Gonna go looking.
Where's your Deathstalker Rexar now?
Serenite Changang's gotta be appealing.
Yes, very
Blocks off that Fledgling getting phase 9.
That's really
That is really good. Giggles, though. Okay. It's a Mossy Horror.
Oh, right, the Mossy Horror. What is going on?
But Mossy Horror will remove his own Chain Gang. That's his line of defense against that Fledgling.
Yeah.
So Mossy Horror, you know, it's obviously great against the...
Nope.
Oh, but, okay, Mossy Horror into Hunter's Mark. That is a board clear rolling into turn 8 for TNTAlpe here, and he is still at 24 life. No minions on the board for Kin.
This is unbelievable. Kin has one final reload, and then we'll be stuck top decking for the rest of this game.
Kin basically has to draw Unstable Element. That is his singular out to try and have enough resources to combat what's happening here.
Yeah.
Because TNTAlpe, even if he does, I don't know that he wins. Because TNTAlpe has Houndmaster and Devil's Sword Egg into play dead, which just clears this board. And now, because he has Houndmaster, every single turn, everything he plays is going to be able to fight back immediately. I don't think Kin is going to have another opportunity to ever have a board that actually sticks.
Nope.
Firefly, that's nothing.
Unbelievable.
This game, this match, Kin has been, I was up 2-0. He's been in a bunch of what looked like very advantaged positions. He had a pair of double-digit attack Blood Knights last game. He lost. This game he's up against one of his worst matchups, and back-to-back flanking strikes just take him off the board. And TNTAlpe is going to win this series and go up to 3-0.
Yeah. Two things real quick is that Admirable made a very big push in the casters ride on the way back from the Europe playoffs last week, saying how he doesn't understand any Hunter deck that cuts flanking strikes right now
so good.
because of how absurdly good it is. So if you're one thing, this is just an example of why it is. The second thing is, remember in the previous years I was talking about how Odd Rogue, sometimes I'm a little bit worried about that deck because it can struggle. It's going to get 0-3'd. TNTAlpe is playing like every single card he needs to destroy this deck, and he is going to reverse sweep Kin unless he is able to pull out something.
He is not. I'll tell you that right now. There's no card he can draw that does anywhere near enough. Certainly not SI Agent, and it is in fact Kin who is toast. TNTAlpe takes it serious.
Wow, what a turn of events. TNTAlpe never gave up, and that is an important lesson for all.